your institutions to continue to serve students as well as move the state performance. Will more importantly, we want Teresa to drive us through the overview of the Tableau data system, which she has done a fantastic job of putting together, maintaining, and enhancing. And hopefully you will agree with that once you see the presentation. And then we'll actually get into information from the Wayne County Schools Career Center and North Central State College as to how they have used Tableau specifically to generate information that they need to complete their CLNAs and applications. We will make sure that we have sufficient time for questions and answers that we will appreciate hearing in real time, and we will answer those in real time. If anything comes to you after the fact, please feel free to reach out to us in the hours or days ahead so that it's still fresh. This webinar is also being recorded. It will be made available on our website along with a number of other useful Perkins 5 resources. And then Teresa will close it out, and we should be at high noon. So without further ado, let us proceed. It should not come as a surprise to anybody with my constant reminders to you all about the due date continuing to be June 30th, which by my calendar is 28 days away for the submission, actually the uploading of the Perkins 5 CLNA and application into the CCIP system. And I appreciate the continuing calls about how to navigate CCIP, where specifically the information needs to be uploaded to the various steps that are needed in CCIP to get it to the authorized representative approved status. I will mention that a caution, and I just had this conversation with Apollo Career Center before the webinar. Most of you in the Ohio Technical Center world have secondary and adult Perkins 5 applications. Make sure that you upload those at the same time, and I don't mean concurrently, but I mean as closely together as possible, and then make sure that you do not have authorized representative approved status until after you have uploaded both the secondary and the adult applications into CCIP. If you do either one unilaterally and it gets to authorized representative approved status, then you have locked your other Perkins grant out of CCIP. That just delays the process. So we appreciate your cooperation and communicate back and forth between the secondary and the adult administrator within your OTC to make sure that you are doing things as much in tandem as possible. The College Perkins grants do not have that stipulation, but make sure that everybody have it in authorized representative approved status no later than 11:59 p.m. on June 30th. Please take as much time as you need up until that deadline to make sure that you have dotted all of your I's, crossed all of your T's. And I will be sending out another set of checklists for you to use for a self-assessment for you to review the content of your comprehensive local needs assessment and applications so that you're able to get it right the first time, and also to do us a favor, myself, Erda McCoy, and Tony Landis, who will be reviewing your applications as a threesome. So we will do that beginning July 1st, and we hope that we will be able to communicate good news back to you as quickly as possible, that what you have uploaded is approvable and ready to be implemented. But we will communicate regularly through the CCIP system for you to know where you are at any point in time. If you get anxious about that, please feel free to contact me, and I'll let you know where you are in the process. Thanks, Teresa. So, as those of you who have been in Perkins for some time know, we do have two different institutional systems that participate in post-secondary Perkins: the Ohio Technical Centers and the colleges, and those are within our administrative authority at the Ohio Department of Higher Education. Perkins 3 and 4 and Perkins 5 continue to have concentrator definitions that we use for federal reporting purposes. And the post-secondary college concentrator definition is unchanged from the Perkins 4 definition. It continues to be in Perkins 5, those students who earned at least 12 credits within a career tech education program of study or completed a CTE program with fewer than 12 credits. Again, that is unchanged from previous definitions of a post-secondary college Perkins 5 concentrator. What is different is the post-secondary adult concentrator definition. It now is for Perkins 5 moving forward. Those students, those adult CTE students who completed 40% of their approved technical program. In Perkins 4 and previously, the definition for concentrator had been those students that completed 20% of their approved technical program. So that percentage has increased by 20% to the new 40% measure. And that is what we are using for all of the OTC post-secondary performance measure calculations. This is also available on our Perkins 5 ODHE website. This is taken right out of our approved Ohio Department of Education, State of Ohio Perkins plan that was submitted to the U.S. Department of Education. These are the post-secondary Perkins 5 performance level percentages. The column that is in the light green for 1P, 2P, and 3P. The baseline level percentages are those that you should be using to compare your most recent Tableau data with. The 80% for 1P for post-program placement, the 74% for 2P for the earned recognized post-secondary credential level, and then the 12% for 3P non-traditional program concentration. So again, those are the three state level performance measure baseline percentages that you should be using with your own Tableau data for your results in those three performance areas. And then you'll see that as we move forward for the remaining years of our approved Perkins 5 state plan, there are incremental increases. Those incremental increases will be applied to your individual institutional Perkins 5 measures. Your measures may very well be different from the state level measures, and we will be calculating those for each of you within your individual institutions based upon your actual past performance. That is also a new methodology that we have been excited about applying in Perkins 5. As you know, for years in Perkins 4, we held you constant with whatever targets you had over really an 8-year span of time. So now we're going to recalculate each of your institutional performance targets against the new Perkins 5 measure definitions using your own actual previous reported data. So look forward to that in the coming months. One P, the post-program placement. I don't want to insult your intelligence, but I will just read this right off of the PowerPoint slide for you. The numerator is defined as the number of career tech ed concentrators who, during the second quarter after program completion, remain enrolled in post-secondary education, are in advanced training, military service, or a service program that receives assistance under Title I of the National and Community Service Act of 1990. Are volunteers, as described in Section 5A of the Peace Corps Act, or are placed or retained in employment. So that is a laundry list of things and activities that students could be involved in after they have left the program. The denominator are the number of CTE concentrators who completed their program within the reporting year. (2P), the earning of recognized post-secondary credentials. The numerator is defined as the number of career tech ed concentrators who receive a recognized post-secondary credential during participation in or within 1 year of program completion. The denominator is defined as the number of CTE concentrators who left post-secondary education in the prior reporting year. And then 3P, non-traditional program concentration. The numerator is defined as the number of CTE concentrators from underrepresented gender groups in CTE programs and programs of study that lead to non-traditional fields. The denominator is defined as the number of CTE concentrators in a CTE program or program of study that leads to a non-traditional field during the reporting year. These definitions are also on our website, the ODHE Perkins 5 website, if you need these reiterated or more information, and they relate back to the targets that we just reviewed. Teresa?
Thank you, Jeff. So now, everyone, we're going to review the Tableau system. To get to the Tableau page, which is what's considered a private web page, you can either click the link where it says Perkins 5 Equity Portal, and that will take you there. Or if you actually want the web address, I have it listed here for you to use, and either you can copy and paste it into your web browser, or you can click it from here as well. This will take you to the actual Tableau page. Okay. So once we get in Tableau, what you're going to find is there are 4 pages, and three of the pages is graphs and data. On the graphs and data pages, there are 4 sections. There's a section for the tabs, which kind of direct you on what data you want to look at. There they have race and ethnicity, special populations, gender, and then program information. On the section number 2, that's the navigation site. That's where you'll see the institution name, program, indicators, and the consortiums. Section 3 is where you'll have more of a visual display. It's going to show your data in a graphic setting. And then section 4 would be the actual data table. That's going to display your the data that is on for that page. Let me go back because I think, okay, yeah, sorry. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about is in section 1, there are 4 tabs. Okay, and on these 4 tabs, once again, you'll have on this particular page, you'll have what's called the race and ethnicity. There you'll be able to see data for all the ethnicities, American Indian and Alaskan Native, Asian, Black, or African American, Hispanic of any race, Native, Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander, 2 or more races, and unknown. Unknown is for if the race did not get marked on the student data. Then we have special populations. That's broken down with economically disadvantaged, individuals with disabilities, limited English, non-trad, non-traditional of workforce, non-traditional of workforce, non-traditional enrollees, excuse me, out of workforce individuals, or in previous years, displaced homemaker, and then single parent. Then we'll have an tab for gender, and that's going to be broken down for male, female. And then in our last tab is for programs, the career clusters with program names. Okay, and section 2, and there are some pictures coming up, sort of kind of put more pictures with everything, but first I kind of wanted to give everybody some information. So once again, on section 2, here's where the user will be able to identify the actual institution that they want to see data on. So whether it's a college or a college consortium, or whether it's one of the each of the OTCs or one of the OTC consortiums or the state of Ohio data, that data will be listed. Then you will have all the program areas listed out in an area where you will be able to select either a specific program area, you can select a couple of different program areas, or you can see all the data for all of your programs together. The next place you would identify data is under indicator. Here's where you'll identify if you want to see information for P1, post-secondary retention and placement, or for 2P, earned, recognized post-secondary credential. And then there is 3P for non-traditional program concentration. And then there's also a tab, once again, if you're in a consortium, you can go in and look at the data by consortium, or you can see all institutions. And then there, if for some reason you want to see data for any institutions that are not in a consortium, it says does not apply, will be labeled for institutions, whether they're OTCs or colleges that are not in a consortium. Okay, in section 3, here is where you'll have the graphical display of data. You'll have, so here under race and ethnic groups, you'll have the different groups listed here at the top of the graph. And then within the graph, you'll have the percent by fiscal year for each one of those groups. And if you ever, it won't work here in PowerPoint, but if you're in Tableau, if you take your mouse and actually put it on a particular column, it will more individually show you the exact data for that particular item that you're putting your mouse on. And in section 4, once again, this is the section where you'll see basically your data displayed in detail. This display will show the selected data with the percents, numeric and denominators, data for each group and the fiscal year. So if we're looking at, once again, here in this group, it has each group listed here on the left-hand side. And then you'll see the years at the top labeled as academic year. And then you'll have your numerator, you'll have your denominator, and then what percent that is for that particular year. So that's in section 4. Section 5 is more or less for data. Here's where you'll see all of the programs that your institution has implemented, and then they'll be organized by the career cluster. So if you want to see programs that, if they offer certain degrees, or if they don't offer a degree, that's where you can, you'll be able to query on the side where it says degree name. So if you want to see all, you would click all, but if you only wanted to see all of your certs, or if you wanted to see all of your associates of science, or all of your whatever degree that your particular institution offers and that have been given through Perkins, they should be listed here as well. Okay, and you can also look up programming by career cluster. So if you only want to see your finance programs or your government programs or health science programs, if you go down here to the bottom and select one of those or multiple ones, those are the ones that will show up. Okay. Okay, so that was just a very broad view of Tableau. And what we thought would be even more beneficial to everyone on the call is if we allow some of your colleagues to kind of show you and explain to you how they're using the system in conjunction with their Perkins data. So right now we have two presenters. First up is going to be Wayne County. They're going to present on knowing and using your data.
I've ever made it. So if it's not
Here, we're going to have Andre.
I'm sure it's good.
And Andre, excuse me, but I've been battling with your last name all morning.
Cerniglia, it's fine. It'll be mostly Sandy anyway.
Okay. Okay. And then we also have Sandy Elliott. And then after Wayne County, we're going to have North Central State College, and we're going to have Gina Kamwiti come up with her presentation on Perkins, how to retrieve and present Perkins data to your leadership team and stakeholders. So, Sandy, if you want to get started.
Reaction when I opened up the Tableau data, but then I had to remind myself that you've got this because this data just represents your students and you know your students. And then you start to think about how you look at your students. And when I look at my students, I really try hard not to generalize groups of students or make assumptions about my students. So I had to do the same thing when looking at the data here. So we're going to get into just a very basic overview of how we use the data at Wayne County. And Teresa did a great job of explaining the data. And I think something very important that Jeff said is coordinating between your post-secondary and your secondary administrator for entry. So what we as a district decided at Wayne County is that we would have a team approach. So Andrew is actually our designated administrator over our Perkins grant for both secondary and post-secondary. And then he works with the rest of the administrators collaboratively to gather the data and to compile information. So the first thing that we were going to do, and I don't think this link is going to work. I thought I was going to have access to the PowerPoint, but I don't think this is going to work. So I wanted you to look at your own internal data collection and see if it was robust. Did you try to click on that link, Teresa?
Yeah, it's going to come up on my screen, which I don't think was what you want.
Can you say yes and see if it opens? No. Okay. So I didn't think that it would, because it's on my my computer. So whenever we look at our data, we have data for the last 20 years, and we keep it in, we use Aceware, Student Manager, for our data collection system. But really, when I'm looking at data that we pull for Perkins or HEI or iPads accreditation, we have an internal access database that we maintain. And in this access database, we collect everything from the date the students started, of course, their program name. It tells us what % of the program they completed, how many hours they complete in any given year. And then we have tabs for different special populations so that we can break out by program and determine how many people in a particular program were unemployed when they started, for example, or whatever the case might be. So, you know, look at your own data and make sure that it's robust. And when I say to really compare your own data, look at it compared to the Tableau data and see, does it match? So then you want to start to dig deep into the data that's provided from the state. And when I say that, start to look at the data. As you look at the picture of the data, look at your classrooms, look at what you see in your building. And does your data represent what you're actually seeing in the building? You have to remember, though, that it's only looking at the data that you submitted up to September 1st. This would have been for your fiscal year 19 data. Then on November 1st is the data pool for Perkins. So at September 1st, you have to have all of your enrollment data entered. By November 1st, you have to have all of your placement and credential data entered. And this data that we're looking at only has data that was up to that point. Go to the next slide, Teresa. And again, here there are links to the Tableau data and to the Perkins targets, which both Teresa and Jeff have already showed, so we can go on from there. Okay, so this screen looks very overwhelming, I know. And we are going to start out from the far right-hand side and move over to the left. It's a picture of data. But what I know is I'm looking at 1P, which is my placement. So I had 8 students complete the program. So as you look at the picture of the data, you can look over there and you can see that there are a total of 8 students. I can tell you that 6 of them were white and 2 of them were Hispanic. I can tell you from looking at this data that 1 of the 2 Hispanic were placed when this data was pulled. Notice I say when the data was pulled because I know they've both been placed by now, but that doesn't matter because it's only what was in there as of November 1st. And all 6 of the white were placed when this data was pulled. I can tell you that my 3-year data indicates that I have predominantly a white population. And for Perkins, what does this tell me? It means that I need a more concentrated effort on reaching a more diversified racial population. Within this program, I've achieved 87.5% placement, and our state target is 80%. So I'm doing okay. But here's a couple of things I want to point out. To really get to this data, I had to be careful that I first selected Wayne County. See the circle around the Wayne County? I had to make sure I select Wayne County. And every time you click on a different tab, you're going to have to go back again and pick your institution. I then went to my career clusters, and I realized that in my career clusters, that business management, I only have 1 program represented in our business management cluster. So for just ease of looking at the data, that's the data that I use today. So I know I'm looking at 1 specific program, and this is our Administrative Office Professionals program. And then you can see down below that I am only looking at the 1P indicator here, and that means I am only looking at placement with this indicator. If we go to the next slide, I now still have Wayne County selected. I still have my business management cluster, but I'm now looking at 2P. So what do I know? I know I'm still looking at my same Administrative Office Professionals program. I'm looking at credential attainment. Okay, so the first thing that I really noticed when I looked at this is there are now only 7 white people, or there are 7 white people. And so you're thinking, well, how do you have 7 now and you had 6 before? How did you get another person? And it's because we need to understand that the 1P data is only pulled on completers, whereas 2P data is pulled on the concentrators. So you have to understand why your numbers are different. Really look at that. And what I found is that all students, regardless of their racial makeup, obtained their industry credential. So I've met 100% of our state target for the credential attainment for this particular program. Next slide. So I go from 100% to 0%, not a great thing, right? My data indicated, and I didn't even put up the picture because it wouldn't have been a very pretty picture to look at. My data indicated that I have not had a non-traditional student enrolled in this career cluster in the last 3 years. Well, that's a really easy target, right? For Perkins, I know this is an area that I need to focus on. I had 0% non-traditional enrollment. Next slide. So there I was looking at a program specifically, but there is a time when you might want to look at all of your programs at one time, and that's to calculate your overall targets. So as Jeff showed us the screen up front, when they're saying our placement target is at 80%, they're not looking at that program by program, they're looking at the complete picture. So if you want to see what your overall placement target is, make sure that you pick your institution name, and then do not pick a career cluster, pick all career clusters, and then make sure that you're on whatever target you want to look at, whether it be 1P, placement, 2P, credential attainment, or 3P, the non-traditional enrollment. Next slide. This was going to be calculating your overall percentage. It was going to take you to the data so you were able to see the data, but again, the links aren't working in this PowerPoint. So this is just a very simplistic look. It's breaking it down. It's making sure that you don't generalize your data, look at it, make sure that the picture you see when you look at that data is the picture that you see when you look in your classroom doors. Next slide. So as I said, Andrew and our team, he is the data guru. He is great at analyzing data and pulling it all together. So he has sent a PDF that I think you should have all received that really goes through and breaks down understanding the system. Andrew, do you have anything else you want to add?
Not really. Nope.
Okay.
You did good,
All right.
Sandy.
Thanks. Any questions, or are we holding those till the end?
Oh, no, I'm not gonna.
I think we're holding those till the end. So that
Yes,
Gina
we
can
are.
go. Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, Gina, we can hear you.
Great. All right. I'm Gina Kamwithi from North Central State College, and this is going to be our portion of Perkins 5 presentation. This is going to be a brief overview. All right. So what I want to caution you is when you are looking at your data, whatever you do, make sure that you tease apart all of the factors that are affecting your data. And keep in mind, you need to be good data detectives. And this is what I described with our folks as being good data detectives. And keep in mind that small numbers, when they're converted to percent, can be pretty deceiving. So let's jump in. Next slide. All right, when we look at how we're doing as a state and us specifically as a college, for the most part, we're meeting the Perkins success measures, right? Most of us are. Most of us are in compliance. But is that good enough? Well, when you tease apart the data, especially for us, when we tease it apart, we realize that we were not doing as well, specifically for several of the special population areas. This is why the state of Ohio wants us to do this analysis. So for our college, we took the 4 areas and we examined all combinations of the factors that would affect how these students did in terms of 1P, 2P, and 3P. Now you're going to notice up here that for us, race, we only had 4 different racial groups that had more than 3 or 4 students in it. So when we're looking at trends, we only had the 4 racial groups. We did not have in our special populations the displaced homemakers with 1 or 2. And then as far as our program areas, we only had 7 of the 10 program areas represented by a significant number of students. That's why you're seeing those numbers for us. So the key to my success in this was an extremely boring repetition of the same steps over and over and over again, and a really good naming convention for my files. Next slide. So here, oh, next slide. Thanks. Here's what the Tableau screen looks like. You guys have seen it a million times with no selections. So this has been my starting point from the very beginning. Next slide. And here are the 3 steps that I followed to get my aggregate data for any of the indicators. So look up in the top left-hand area. You can see the 3 steps are: you select your tab up top. So in this instance, you're seeing I have special populations. My step 2 is I would isolate over on the far right-hand side. You can see the number 2 highlighted. I would isolate, all right, which indicator do I want to look at? And step 3, I would choose North Central State College. Now you can do it either way. You can, however you want to do it. The reason I always chose my college at the very last was because I kept messing up. I kept getting everyone else's data in with mine if I didn't do it in this fashion. Now what I did was then, see where I have the little star? Oops, oh, go back, sorry. See where I have the little star? That is, okay, I guess we'll go to the, okay. That is where all of my data came from. That is where I made all my hay. All right, next slide. So I did this to be able to answer these questions. You guys know that these are the questions on the application that we had to answer by looking at our Tableau data. Next chart. Next slide, sorry. All right, so on this particular one, I'm showing you my same 3 steps again. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to show you how boring it is. Sometimes people look at this and they're like, oh, this is too confusing and overwhelming. No, it's just boring. It's just boring. You do the same steps. So you go in this one, you can see that I chose the race. And I came up by the check mark there with that chart. Next slide. So I'm going to show you what this looked like then when I presented it to our folks. So the question of, did our students get something for their education with us? So that was 2P. Were they able to actually get a credential? So as good data detectives, we're looking at this. And one of the first things that jumped out to our leadership team was, wow, look at the jump in African-American success. But I had to caution them, as good data detectives, you have to remember small numbers, when they're converted to percent, can make big problems. Now, what we did was we talked this through. We said, all right, wow, what was that jump in African-American success? And were there factors that contributed to that? So the first thing I'm going to tell you is the number of students in 2016 African-American were 28. The number of students represented in my pool for 2019 was also 28. The only difference was that in the first one, only 12 students succeeded. In the second one, 24 students succeeded. So we had a big jump. So what were some of the possible explanations for that? Hold on, I'll tell you in just a minute. Well, we got into the qualitative data. Next slide. So I went to our leadership team and we did the same thing, but we did it this time with gender. We said, all right, we've looked at race. So now let's look at how we did as far as program completion for gender. So it wasn't a big surprise for any of us at our college. We've made student success a strategic initiative. So we are doing considerably better. But I will point out that one of the things that we saw was that males were succeeding at a lower rate than women across our data. So as good data detectives, I asked our leadership team, what do you think it is? Do you think it was the mix of the programs? Was there some gender bias going on here where the women were going into male profession or female professions and that was what helped them? Well, let's look at the entire state. Men across the state are struggling to get their credentials. So do we ask ourselves the question, or do we come to the conclusion, I'm sorry, do we come to the conclusion, very provocative, well, maybe it's just men aren't as smart as women. Yeah, that's what it is, because we see it across the state. Not only, all right, why do I bring that up? Because that's the heart of equity. Obviously, our knee-jerk reaction is no, it has nothing to do with the men necessarily, but we do that all the time with our equity measures. So let's jump over as, whoops, nope, back up right there, yeah. So as good data detectives, one of the things we asked our people to do was there anything that we were doing with men that may have caused us a problem with their credential attainment? So the first thing we did was we isolated and we decided to look at, well, let's look to see if the programs where men go into the programs, if they're succeeding at higher rates than the women. So the programs that were gendered towards men, that'd be the manufacturing, the law enforcement. And the reason I know they're gendered that way is because that's how NAEP tells us that, you know, a higher percentage of men go into the manufacturing. So I wanted to see what's going on here. We found that men were struggling even in the areas where it was a male-dominated profession. So we presented this to our deans, and the health sciences dean piped up and she said, all right, I want you to see something. Look at 2017. We had a minus 15, the men were succeeding at 15 percentage points lower than women. We know that the health sciences area is gendered as female, so perhaps something was going on within our programs. And this is where qualitative data helped us focus and create interventions. The dean said in 2017, when they realized that all of their men, and they were all African-American men, bailed at the same time from their nursing program, they decided to do exit interviews. And they found out that the men, when they started to struggle, frankly said in their exit interviews, when we started to struggle, we were not going to, it was too embarrassing to come to middle-aged white ladies and say we were struggling. We needed someone else within the program that we could relate to. So what do you think the dean did between 2017 and 2018? She hired an African-American male faculty member. Look at the jump. Men underperforming by 15 percentage points before that jumped. Next slide. Okay, all righty. So what we have seen is that small numbers can shift your percent dramatically. Exit interviews can tell us a whole lot, and that interventions can make a difference. What we did was we put some kind of nuance into our data. Not all the data was obvious. It's easy to fall into the trap that it's something intrinsic in the population that is making them succeed at a lower rate, instead of saying, in this particular instance, maybe it's something that we're doing. Going to jump to the next one. I think I'm packing an awful lot in a short period of time here. We decided to pick apart one other area on our campus. So I'm just giving you two areas, the health sciences area where we saw what was happening with the men. Here's the other one. What we saw is that individuals with disabilities were struggling in our health sciences programs, both to 1P, get placed, but then go to the next slide, and also to get their credential attainment. Now, here is where our institutional leaders, as good data detectives, they really stopped and they looked at what was it about post-program placement and credential attainment that we could actually do something about, and which one was validly we needed to deal with. Go to the very next slide. All right, right here with the post-program placement, you can see down in the bottom right-hand corner, that's where I got this information on Tableau. In the top left is the chart that I made from that. What you notice is, look at the drop in percentage points between 2018 and 2019. That's huge, huge. 22%, 22.2%, huge drop. However, as you can see, it was one student moving from success to not being successful that changed everything. Go to the next slide. Whoops. Okay. I guess one of my slides is missing. So that's okay. Go back up one more. Up to, sorry about that. Go to number 42. Or no. Can you go to the one that shows the post-program placement back? I am so sorry. And to be back like 3 slides. 1, 2, 3. That one. That one. Yep. No, you had it. Yep. Okay. So post-program placement. The reason that our folks did not catch their hair on fire about the post-program placement for individuals with disabilities is because, again, small numbers, when changed to percents, can make some pretty dramatic movements, but unless it's a longer-term trend, it doesn't tell us a whole lot. All right, so you can jump forward now. Okay, one more. Okay, all right. So why are we doing all of this? So to reiterate, all of this is aggregate data can be deceiving. You must dig very deeply when you are looking at your data and ask yourself all of the factors that could be affecting, what's going on with your data, and make sure that you are willing to pull in qualitative data. If I hadn't been willing to listen to what the other deans said related to the interventions or what was really going on at the ground level, I would have made some very bad conjectures about this data. Okay, so the hardest part of all of this, you can go to the very last one. So the hardest part about all of this, a lot of people think it's the Tableau and pulling that down. No, that part's boring. The hard part is doing the difficult job of data detection and finding out every nuance of what's really going on behind your data. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for giving us your presentations. We're towards the end of everything. And on this slide, what we wanted you just to know is that if you go out to the Ohio Department of Higher Ed website, you can find all these resources. We'll also post this presentation, but to actually click the link, go to the website that's listed here to see those. Also, if there's any comments or questions or concerns, we wanted to address them real quick before our time runs out.
Thank you, Teresa. So now would be the time. We've heard a lot of wonderful information shared by the Wayne County and North Central State presenters. Awesome, and I really appreciate the deep dive into qualitative data and how it relates to equity analysis, as well as Wayne County's overview that broke it down in ways that were bite-sized and understandable. So those both together were very complimentary. We do have a number of people on the call. This is a lot of information that may not prompt questions right now, but we certainly would welcome them either in the few minutes that we have remaining or directed to us at some point in the near future. So anybody have any questions and or just general comments about the presentation itself? Well, hearing none, I want to appreciate and thank those of you who have participated in today's webinar, as well as our presenters and our illustrious ODHE team of Tony Landis, Berta McCoy, Teresa Bryant, Dr. Lori White, and myself. We will give you the grace of 7 minutes back to your busy schedules. And Teresa, thank you. You did an awesome job of driving us through the webinar today. So thank you and everybody else very much. Have yourself a